Hello and welcome to Crooked House Gaming. Here at Crooked House Gaming, we like to explore the gameplay of simulation games, usually through a series of Let's Plays. In this episode, we will continue to explore the gameplay of Democracy 4. Democracy 4 is a political sim that lets you choose the role of a world leader and govern a country. If this sounds like something that you'd be interested in, be sure to hit that like button, and if you're new here, welcome, and be sure to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any future episodes. Today, we're going to continue to explore our gameplay as President of Italy. When I hit that button, we will be entering our first term of our second year as President of Italy. Let's see how we did. GM food proposal. There's an urgent policy question that requires your immediate attention. A number of large agricultural companies are interested in growing genetically modified food on our soil. Some food can be genetically manipulated to allow for longer shelf life and both disease and herbicide resistance. Opponents are concerned about the potential risks associated with altering the food chain. Farmers are divided on this issue. Allow GM crops. GM crops have huge potential benefits, and not only do they increase the shelf life and thus reduce costs for sellers, but they can also reduce the need for pesticides, thus meaning less harmful chemicals in use during their production. It's also possible for foods to be created with other benefits, such as improved vitamin content. Ban the sale of GM food. There is no need for GM food. The benefits are great for the producers, but not for the consumers. We simply do not know enough about the long-term effects of genetically modifying the food chain. Scientific research is all well and good, but once released into the environment, these organisms cannot be recalled. We should act now to protect the food chain from GM. We are banning the sale of GM food. The environmentalists are happy at plus 13%. The GDP goes down at negative 3%. Capitalists are unhappy at negative 3%. Poor voter perception. There is a problem with which way the voters perceive you as a leader that needs to be addressed before the next election. Strong leader over time. The major donor abandoning our party has affected us greatly. We are not dealing with organized crime enough for our voters, so we need to address that. Budget report. Our credit rating is worryingly just a triple B. We need to fix this either through growing our GDP, cutting expenditure, or increasing taxation. Polls report. Our approval rating is disappointing. If we believe the polls, you would get just 15% of the vote. Economic forecast. Good news. The global economy is doing well, and this is having a positive effect on our GDP. Cabinet report. The loyalty of your ministers can best be described as loyal. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be adequate. Security briefing. The Environmental Alliance have warned that it is the duty of its members to fight against the government policy at all levels. The Sustainability Trust threat assessment is a 4. The Evangelical Alliance is a threat assessment of 7. The Environmental Alliance is a threat assessment of 10. The Diversity Alliance is the threat assessment of 1. And the Rural Alliance is a threat assessment of 1. Our security effectiveness is adequate. We have 13 political capital to spend. We are of the Defenders of the Faith political party. Let's see what the religious want. The religious want us to address family planning. Family planning, an implemented program of family planning to improve sexual health in your country. Typical services include education, medical advice, and contraception distribution. This program will enable individuals to place the number and spacing of their children. Family planning empowers women and reduces the number of babies born into poverty. This is 45% popular with the vote. We're going to be spending 3 political capital to lower this. We will apply the changes. We have 10 political capital to spend. Large organized gangs of serious criminals are now targeting our country. We do not have the resources to deal with them, and they are causing serious problems, including higher level of street crime and violent crime, as well as supplying drugs and guns. Witness protection program. What good is catching a criminal if the witnesses to the crime disappears forever? Protecting these witnesses is of utmost importance for a working justice system, and the better it is, the more criminals get convicted and the more witnesses come forward if they see a crime. This is 50% popular with the vote. We are going to invest 1 political capital to increase this to medium. We will apply the changes. We have 9 political capital to spend. Tobacco tax. Despite the failure of tobacco companies to admit it, there's a good reason to believe that smoking has negative effects on health. This is used as a justification for taxing tobacco. Cynics point out that the government benefits hugely from a tax on a product it is supposedly against. Health campaigners encourage the tax as a way to encourage a more healthy population. Presently, our tobacco tax is 11%. We are going to spend 8 political capital to increase this to 18%. We will apply the changes. We have 1 political capital to spend. Pollution controls. Restriction on what chemicals and emissions can be released into the atmosphere. Controls reduce pollution and increase health, possibly at the cost of economic economic competitiveness. This is 46% popular with the vote. Right now, we have extensive monitoring. We do have a respiratory disease in our country and a pollution problem. We will spend our last political capital to increase this to government targets. We will apply the changes. We have zero political capital to spend, and thus we are at the end of our first term of our second year as president of Italy. Let's hit that button. We will now be entering our second term of our second year as president of Italy. Let's see how we did. The GDP is down. Crime is down. Pollution. Environmental experts tell us the country's pollution problem is now under control and the citizens no longer need to wear face masks when cycling to work. Credit rating downgraded. The major international credit agencies have downgraded the status of your government debt. This is likely to have a knock-on effect on GDP as foreign companies become wary of investing in our economy. It will also result with the interest rate we pay on our debt rising. There is a good chance that this will upset our capitalist voters too. You should take action to regain credibility with the ratings agency by reducing the level of debt as soon as possible. Your current credit rating is now a double B. Capitalists are unhappy at -5%. The GDP goes down at -3%. Business confidence goes down at -15%. Polls report polls do not look good. Our last poll put us at 9% of the vote in an election. A cabinet report. The loyalty of your ministers can best be described as supportive. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be adequate. Economic forecast. Good news. The global economy is doing well and this is having a positive effect on our GDP. Security briefing. The Environmental Alliance has been staging protests at the homes of government officials. The Environmental Alliance threat assessment is a 12. The Sustainability Trust threat assessment is a 5. The Evangelical Alliance is a threat assessment of 8. And the Liberal League is a threat assessment of 1. The Diversity Alliance is a threat assessment of 1. Federation of Entrepreneurs is a threat assessment of 1. A Rural Alliance is a threat assessment of 1. We have 12 political capital to spend. Intelligence services. Security services are essential tool in the fight against organized crime and terrorism. Good, reliable intelligence can be difficult and expensive to obtain, and in many cases, the methods employed can be unpopular with liberals and human rights advocates. This is only 1% popular with the vote. Right now, we have a sizable spy agency. We are going to spend 4 political capital to increase our high-tech spy services. We will apply the changes. We have 8 political capital to spend. Science funding. In some countries, the majority of research is funded by private companies. State-sponsored science can be useful for investing in very long-term research projects, or for those that may not be commercially rewarding. The benefits of state sector research are freely available to the entire population rather than patented by corporations. This is 0% popular with the vote. This will increase our technology, this will increase our energy efficiency, this will improve our GDP, and this will lower unemployment. Right now, we are investing in electron microscopes. We will spend 2 political capital to increase the amount of electron microscopes we invest in. We will apply the changes. We have 6 political capital to spend. Alcohol tax. Medically, there is a clear case for the government to tax alcohol in order to discourage consumption because of its negative effects on health and its positive links to social breakdown. On the other hand, those who drink socially see the government benefiting from such a tax as to be hypocritical. This is 0% popular with the vote. We are trying to raise some money for our government. Presently, our alcohol tax is at 26%. We will spend 3 political capital to increase this to 34%. The income generated from the alcohol tax will be 405.86 million euro. We will apply the changes. We have 3 political capital to spend. Adult education subsidies. Adult education subsidies are a way to encourage people to retrain and continue their education after they have joined the workforce. This includes evening classes and distance learning resources. These schemes help raise the overall education level of the workforce. This is 50% popular with the vote. This will increase our productivity. We will spend 2 political capital to increase this. We will apply the changes. We have 1 political capital to spend. Plastic bags tax. Plastic bags, unlike paper ones, are not biodegradable, so it can last more or less forever, eventually ending up in huge, unsightly landfill sites. Tax on bags discourages their use and encourages people to reuse stronger, more environmentally friendly alternatives. Capitalists just see this as the state meddling. This is 41% popular with the vote. We will spend 1 political capital to increase our plastic bag tax. We will apply the changes. We have 0 political capital to spend. And thus we are at the end of the second term of our second year as president of Italy. Let's hit that button. We will now be entering the third term of our second year as president of Italy. Let's see how we did. Embezzled funds recovered. Money siphoned off by a a former leader has been recovered from foreign bank accounts. As the level of corruption in our society is reduced, our enforcement agencies are unimpeded to right the wrongs of the past. Everyone is happy at plus 10%. Situation imminent. Our data is showing that we have a potentially bad situation, multinational tax evasion on our hands if we do not act soon. Budget report. Our credit rating is worryingly just a double B. We need to fix this either through growing our GDP, cutting expenditure, or increasing taxation. Polls report the government is not popular amongst its citizens. Only 18% of them intend to vote for you in the next election. Cabinet report. The loyalty of your ministers can best be described as supportive. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be adequate. Economic forecast. Good news. The global economy is doing well and this is having a positive effect on our GDP. Security briefing. The Evangelical Alliance are holding town hall meetings to express their anger at the current government. The Evangelical Alliance threat assessment is 6. The Sustainability Trust threat assessment is a 3. The Environmental Alliance is a threat assessment of 6. Our security effectiveness is adequate. We have 12 political capital to spend. I'm going to fire our law and order minister, and I am going to hire Miriam Pellegrino for law and order. She is with the religious and the youth. Her suitability for this position is 89%. We're going to hire her. She will bring 1.6 political capital to our government. The tax minister is now very, very unhappy with us. We will be firing her, and it will not cost us any political capital. We are going to be hiring Ms. Longo for the position. She's 89% suitable for tax minister. We will hire her. We're going to leave the rest of the cabinet alone. We have 11 political capital to spend. Foreign investor tax breaks. A special tax break given to large foreign-owned multinational companies to encourage them to invest in our country. This should include tax-free periods, introductory rates for corporate tax, and straight subsidies to encourage investment from overseas, what will be seen as incredibly unpatriotic pandering to the whims of huge capitalist organizations. This is only 7% popular with the vote. This will increase our business confidence. This will increase our foreign relations. This will increase high earnings. This will increase foreign investment. The views by the patriots of us will go down. We will implement this policy. We will apply the changes. We have 1 political capital to spend. Plastic bag tax. Plastic bags, unlike paper ones, are not biodegradable and can last more or less forever, eventually ending up in huge unsightly landfill sites. A tax on bags discourages their use and encourages people to reuse stronger, more environmentally friendly alternatives. Capitalists just see this as the state meddling. This is 42% popular with the vote. We will spend our last political capital to increase our plastic bag tax. We will apply the changes. We have 0 political capital to spend, and thus we are at the end of our 3rd term of our 2nd year as president of Italy. Let's hit that button. We will now be entering our 4th term of our 2nd year as president of Italy. Let's see how we did. The GDP is up. Crime is also up. Positive discrimination. There is an urgent policy question that requires your immediate attention. There are calls for a law to expressly set quotas for employment of ethnic and other minorities by large corporations and government institutions. This would put pressure on companies to give higher priority to some job candidates than others on the basis of their race, sex, or age. Pass the law. We need this law. In economic terms, it makes no sense for people below or above a certain age to be rendered unemployable. Also, in human rights terms, this is a much needed compensation for years of discrimination in the workplace against ethnic minorities, women, the elderly, and the disabled. Reject the law. This is a deeply flawed law. It makes no sense to fight discrimination by using discrimination. This creates 2 problems: that of the minority members who feel they may not have achieved the position on merit, and the resentment of potential employees who was denied the job. We're gonna pass the law. The liberals are happy at plus 10%. The conservatives are unhappy at negative 20%. The ethnic minorities are happy at plus 15%. Gender equality increases at plus 15%, and liberalism increases at plus 4%. Major donor abandons party. It looks like you have not been keeping an eye on the opinions of the major financial backers. One of our wealthy donors has just cut their support for our party. This may have effect on our ability to campaign effectively unless we can find a replacement donor and keep them. We're seen as a strong leader at negative 20%. Budget report. International Credit Ratings Agency rates our government as a double B. This is a bad sign and is pushing up the rate of interest we pay on our debt. We must address this. Polls report. Polls do not look good. Our last poll put us at 20% of the vote in an election. Cabinet report. The loyalty of your ministers can best be described as supportive. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be adequate. Economic forecast. Good news. The global economy is doing well, and this is having having a positive effect on our GDP. We have 12 political capital to spend. Gambling. To some, gambling is a sin which leads to poverty and disaster, but others believe that some social gambling is harmless fun, which can also be taxed nicely by the government as an additional form of revenue. It also encourages tourism and creates jobs. The popularity with the voter is 46%. We are going to be lowering this. We will spend 4 political capital to do so. We will apply the changes. We have 8 political capital to spend. Family planning. Implement a program of family planning to improve sexual health in your country. Typical services include education, medical advice, contraception, distribution. This program will enable individuals to plan the number and spacing of their children. Family planning empowers women and reduces the number of babies born into poverty. This is 45% popular with the vote. We are going to spend 2 political capital to reduce this. We will apply the changes. We have 6 political capital to spend. Retirement age. When state pensions exist, this policy sets the minimum age at which workers can retire and receive a pension from the state. This is also used as a general benchmark by private businesses when setting their own retirement age. An early retirement may be desirable for workers, but it impacts the economy and will reduce productivity. We will spend 4 political capital to increase the retirement age to 68. We will apply the changes. We have 2 political capital to spend. Organ donation. There are few who would disagree that organ transplant is an amazing technology, but it requires a plentiful supply of donors. Sadly, many people do not give this topic consideration. Some suggest that opt-out policy is best, with consent for donation assumed unless otherwise stated. Others suggest that this is no place for the state to interfere and explicit permission should be requested. This is 0% popular with the vote. Presently, we have, if approved by next of kin, we will be spending 2 political capital to lower this. We will apply the changes. We have 0 political capital to spend, and thus we're at the end of our 4th term of our 2nd year as president of Italy, and thus we are at the end of this episode. Thank you so much for stopping by our cricket house. If you like what you saw, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you want to follow our future episodes. It really helps us out. Have a great week. See you soon.